So I'll start recording. Perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first workshop for DS3 for the beginning of the school year. So today we're going to be talking about interviewing for data science jobs. And my name is Tanveer. I'm the director of workshops here at the Data Science Society for UCSD. And I'm also joined by Takashi and Nick over here. So yeah. So just to get started, just talk about, what our org is. So we're the Data Science Society, and we're a community of now more than like 600, 700 students within our Discord that are all passionate about all facets of data and data science. So we provide all sorts of different opportunities, such as workshops like this, projects, and all sorts of different professional networking and development events. So yeah, check out our website if you're interested in learning more about our orgs, and we're currently also recruiting for our subcommittees. So this is kind of also an agenda of what we're going to be going over today. So we'll all introduce ourselves, who the presenters are, kind of talk about what the interview process looks like broadly for both software engineering positions and data science. And then we'll talk about how you guys can study for, software engineering positions, as well as studying for technical data science interviews. So a little bit about me. My name is Tanveer. I'm a fourth-year data science major here, and over the last summer, I was able to intern as a software dev engineer at Amazon in Seattle. So some of the projects I worked on involved me building some front-end React app, as well as working on some back-end machine learning services. And you guys can kind of see like the technologies I was able to work with through that, right? So how the interview process kind of worked for me within Amazon was I applied in like September, via their online application. And I heard back in like January with like an online exam from them. So I basically completed 3 different online exams that Amazon gave me, and then got a final round interview where that was basically like, we'll talk about it later, it was a typical technical computer science exam. And then I was able to get the offer from there.
I can talk about myself. So hi everyone, my name is Takashi. I'm also fourth-year data science major at UCSD. Past 2 years, I was doing internship at Oracle and different teams. In the latest team, I worked with an analytics team. So I got to work on recommender system to suggest what visualization to use, which was really fun for me because as a data science major, I always wanted to work on that stuff. In terms of application, this was like return offer for me. So it's kind of different, but I remember applying around like late in fall or early winter previous year. Yeah, so that's it from me.
Okay, guys, what's up? My name is Nick Singh. So I worked as a software engineer at Facebook full-time. I interned at Google and Microsoft. Most recently, I was the head of marketing at a Series A startup backed by Peter Thiel and Naval Ravikant and a few other bigwigs. So, I've held roles in marketing, data science, and software engineering. And the most recent thing I've done is wrote this book, Ace the Data Science Interview, which we'll talk about in a bit. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and grab a copy of the book, but I'll plug the book later too. But yeah, just had to give that shout out. Cool.
Yeah, it's a great resource. We'll talk more about that later. But I guess we'll get started. If you're from UCSD here or any other school and you're majoring as an undergraduate data science major, you might be wondering exactly what you can apply to. So data science majors, I've seen personally from the peers that I've interacted with, data science majors can hold all sorts of different roles as an undergrad. I've seen people as typical data scientists, data analysts, ML engineers, software engineers, business analysts, applied scientists, and the list goes on and on and on. And with the blend of computer science and statistics that undergrad data science education provides, you guys can work in a variety of different roles. So basically, don't let job titles hold you back from applying to certain jobs, guys. Anything that any jobs that fit your skill set or what you've specifically done in and out of the classroom, you guys should apply to, and don't hesitate like that. So we'll also talk about now what the typical interview process looks like for software engineering internships as well as full-time positions. So generally these days, we start with the company sending you like an online exam. This is typically something proctored through like HackerRank or CodeSignal or some of these like big coding websites. Based on your score on that exam, the company will then reach out typically and schedule a phone interview. And typically, if you're interviewing for software engineering positions, it'll still be like a coding interview where you're basically solving a data structure type problem and talking a lot about your thought process. After that, it completely depends on the company. Some companies might just forward you straight to their final round, where it's like a mix of behavioral and technical interviews. And that can vary from company to company. So we'll talk about, what behavioral interviews entail and what technical interviews entail. So as I just talked about, the online assessment is typically something that can take anywhere between 1 to 2 hours and can range from anywhere between 2 to 5 questions. And the topic of these exams is typically data structures and algorithms. But if you're applying for certain like data science specific roles, I've also seen now that the companies are now sending like SQL exams that you guys have to like write out queries for, a given schema and that sort of stuff to solve problems. So be prepared for that if you are applying for those type of roles as well. Typically, these websites allow you to choose any language of your choosing. Just choose whatever you're most comfortable with. I imagine since we're all in data science, most of us are most comfortable with Python. So that is totally fine to use for this sorts of stuff. And some of the tips we would give you is practice coding questions on websites to LeetCode. And if you're applying to a specifically well-known company, if you have like LeetCode Premium, for example, you're actually able to specifically look at questions that are tagged for that company. Like basically see what questions have been asked by that company previously in interviews, and you get to study from that list, and it really helps you narrow down on other questions to be useful for your prep. After that, the online exam, you typically get a technical phone interview. So they can last anywhere up to an hour. And the interviewer is typically like some sort of like software engineer 2 or above. And they'll give you typically 2, maybe 3 questions about algorithm data structures. So when you're solving this problem in a live interview, it's super important not just that you solve the problem, but you also talk a lot about your thinking process. So you'll typically be given the problem, and then the interviewer and you will basically kind of like talk about it. You got to fully understand the problem there. So make sure that before you start coding, you talk out the problem with the interviewer, ask about any edge cases, ask about maybe things that you might be confused about on the prompt, and then only start coding. Don't start coding until you fully understand the problem. And then after that, you could typically get a behavioral interview. So behavioral interviews are typically interviews with a recruiter or hiring manager or someone of that nature. And most of the time, they'll have conversations with you about your previous experiences, at other internships at other companies. And then also they'll ask you questions to basically kind of like scope your fit in that specific company and their culture. So the best way I'd say to prepare for these interviews is to basically look at your most like up-to-date resume. Make sure you're obviously familiar with your own technical experience, have it on the top, like fresh on the top of your mind. So that way you're able to give, good answers to those questions about your previous experiences. And second, make sure you guys are looking at like whatever company you're interviewing for, like go to the website, and typically they have like a section about like their specific culture and their specific principles. So especially in like Amazon's case or Facebook's case, for example, they have very, very specific like leadership principles that are really, really good to hammer down on during an interview. So make sure you guys are kind of keeping note of that as you're conducting these sorts of interviews. And was earlier, but I guess the way to prepare for these interviews that that are coming up are make sure to keep practicing the coding questions on LeetCode. Not only practice solving these questions and understanding them, but while you're like solving them alone, like practice like talking aloud, explaining your problem solving process as you're working on them, And also remember to don't start before fully understanding the problem. Another awesome way to not only, prepare for these interviews, but also help you land the interview to kind of build up your portfolio. Make sure you work on personal projects, participate in hackathons. This way you guys can kind of put your skills to your real life data science and software engineering skills to the test and in practice. And last but not least, make sure before any interview, you properly research the company you're interviewing for. This will not only demonstrate your interest, but will also, just better prepare you for any questions specific to that company. And yeah, you can take it over from here, Takashi.
Sure. So, yeah, he quickly went over the leak code aspect. I can briefly explain like what it looks like. So, let's see. Let's go dive into the leak code section. Yes. I can share the screen and maybe solve a problem or something. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. What up? So. Give me a sec. I'm guessing you can see now. So typically what I do is like I go to a list of problems that's popular by a company that I'm applying to, and I'll show you how I usually do it. This is like really my favorite question. So you come here and I usually time for like 20 minutes because like you ideally want to solve a medium, easy to medium question within 20 minutes because that's like, in the interview we have like 45 minutes, so but you expected to solve 2 questions. So yeah, about 20 minutes. And if you guys want to go ahead and try to think about it, then I can pause for a second and then come back to the solution.
Yeah, we don't have to code out the problem, but if you guys have any ideas, at a high level about how you'd solve this problem, like feel free to unmute your mic or type in the chat.
I can explain the problem as well. It's pretty simple. So we have an array of integers and k, some number k, and then we want to return k's largest element in the array. Okay. I guess I'm just gonna go ahead and start trying to solve this. Yeah, so one way to go about it is like sort the whole array and then return the k's largest element. On that, so we want to be aware of like all the time complexity it takes to solve the problem. I believe it will take so I'll go over later about the concepts, but it will take all of log n to sort array. So first we could do something like sorted nums. This will be n log n, and then return the k's largest element. Actually, we can do reverse true, and then we'll do descending order, and then return k minus 1, which should give the k's largest element. So this is one way to go about it, but there's another way that's more efficient. And like ideally in the interview, you want to be able to solve question as efficient as possible. Interviewer will give you some hints sometimes, but it's easier if you have a lot of experience with practicing problems. So do as many as you can if you can when you have time. And for this problem, I'll just tell you the hint. So you can actually use min heap, and that will reduce this log n part to log k, which will be more efficient to do. But there are some optimization you can do about it. But basically, you're expected to optimize as much as possible in the interview. Yeah, I can go over some other slides. That's all from me on the.
Yeah, should we go back to the presentation then?
Yeah.
Go back to the slides. Here we go. So that's all you then, Takashi.
Okay. So as we've been discussing, there aren't that many things they're gonna ask at the end of the day. So we are expected to know all the basic algorithm, data structures, and sometimes dynamic programming, but it's really rare to see dynamic programming, at least in my experience. But you do need to learn about recursion. And big O notation for runtime mistakes. Complexity analysis is crucial. If you don't know what it means, you can look it up and learn about it. But basically, you want to know how efficient your algorithm is, and also how efficient in terms of space-wise and so on. And they'll ask on this like in every interview. So you should know about it. It's not that complicated. And object-oriented programming, I guess, is just like class and function. Just make sure you split a chunk of code into functions and stuff if it gets too messy. Next slide, please. Okay, so there are a couple of data structures to study: stacks, queue, hash set, hash map, linked list. So in terms of Python, stacks and queues are basically list. For queues, you could import. There's a specific library for it that you have to study. Hash set, hash map. These are just set and dictionary. Linked list is just a class of node. And yeah, and we also have graphs, binary heaps, binary trees, heaps, fixed trees. So for me, I learned a lot from the DS3 because that's where we all learn. That's where I learned all the basics of these data structures and algorithms in Java. In the interview, I use Python, but if you haven't taken that class, I highly recommend taking that class, and then you learn. You will implement those data structures, so you have a really good understanding of like each structures. If you're not UCSD student, you can take a mock or some online courses. I know CS50 by Harvard is really popular. I've never taken it myself, but I've heard good things about it. Next slide, please. Okay. Next, algorithms. So there are a couple of algorithms. So we have sorting algorithms, dynamic programming, and then graph traversals and minimum spanning trees. So I'd say focus on understanding graph traversal first, if I were to pick an order, because you really want to understand BFS, DFS as deep as possible. I've never seen the extras algorithm in my personal experience, so it's good to know. But BFS and DFS, you should definitely need to know. You can implement BFS with while loop, DFS, you can use a recursion and all these kind of things. And then if you feel comfortable with these graph traversals, then you can branch out to more other algorithms. But I think it's really important to start with a really basic one in the beginning.
So, just to like finish this kind of portion of the presentation, these are some, useful resources for you guys to look at for both SWE and data science related things. So we talked about LeetCode and HackerRank both. These are great places for you guys to be able to, practice your coding skills for these type of technical interviews. Kaggle is a great resource for you guys to learn more about data science concepts and also just like practice your data science skills on data sets. And same with SQL Kazoo for that. And then Coursera is great if you want to take like, courses on these data structures and algorithms, or you want to take courses specifically more about other data science concepts like machine learning and all. So yeah, we can now kind of hand it over to Nick, and he can present much more deeply on the on data science specific concepts for those interviews.
All righty, let's stop screen sharing there. What's up, guys? For people who are a little late, my name is Nick. I'm one of the co-authors of Ace the Data Science Interview. What's up, guys? Let me get my slides start going. Let's go here. Actually, let me first share my screen. Guys, I'm not used to the Zoom University. Back in my day, we didn't even have Zoom. How old do you guys think I am? Put it in the chat, whoever tells it honestly. Whoever puts an age I want to be will win some kind of prize. Not whoever gets it right. Okay, sweet. Cool, can you all see this? And I can't even see the chat, so I'll periodically just stop presenting and hop back in. So it's not just me here, it's my buddy Kevin. I mentioned, I worked at Facebook and Google, did a little bit of marketing. These days, big on LinkedIn and figuring out what to do after the book. And for fun, what you won't see in LinkedIn is like, I'm a certified lover boy. I'm like Drake's #1 fan. And I like to DJ hip hop and Bollywood. Tanveer's laughing. Tanveer's like, dude, I can't believe you said that. Kevin, you want to talk about yourself real quick?
Hey, what's up,
Let me
guys?
stop presenting. Yeah, let me stop presenting.
Hey, yeah, Nick. So I also worked at Facebook, and Nick and I were roommates. We've known each other for a very long time now. We ran a club in high school together, and yeah, he's really good at DJing. So yeah, we wrote a book and everything. So I guess we can get back to the slides.
Sorry, I'm just talking about my age real quick. See, it's like if we removed outliers, it'd be good. And I feel like now it's like a data science problem. Like, what age am I? And then, all right, let me screen share again. Sorry, I'm a little too many windows. Okay, there we are. Okay, cool. So you heard from Kevin, baller on the Penn basketball team back in his day. We're both 26. We went to high school together, and then we were roommates at Facebook. So we lived in Palo Alto, worked at Facebook, and hung out all the time. And well, we both were, we've worked in a bunch of different coding roles and data roles. And we're just like, why is there no cracking the coding interview for data and ML? Like, Takashi showed leak code so nicely. Like, why does this shit not exist for data science, right? So Kevin and I both wondered that. Not because we're like expert data scientists who just aced every interview. No. We failed so many interviews. And that's why we're like, why is there no book out there to help us? So turned out we just had to do it ourselves. So we wrote the book on it. And yeah, that's our book, Ace the Data Science Interview, which came out last month. Some of you in the audience, I don't know, is anyone here? It would be really funny for me to know. I gave a similar presentation this time last year with you all at UCSD. And I was like, yeah, guys, the book's about to come out. Like, give me your email. I'll let you know in a month when it's out. And it took us a full fucking like 10 months since then. But it's out. And this is us, cheesin'. It's a #1 bestseller ahead of a few other books you may have seen or liked. So it's doing quite well. And it's pretty exciting stuff. So in today's talk, we're going to just talk about the technical part of the interview. We're not going to talk about behavioral. But we had to give a little shout out to like getting these interviews in the first place, right? I can't remember who in the beginning, someone asked about like the stigma of like, how do you overcome being an undergrad in data science when there's so many masters and so many PhDs? And like, let me be frank with you guys, right? Half the people are saying this is the hottest market, the easiest market for job offers. But then the other half of people are like, yo, like that might be true or whatever, but like I'm still struggling out here. No one is picking up my calls. No one's giving me an interview. Guys, me and Kevin had both been there. we preach the build, measure, learn approach where, you know, you don't think of your job hunt as this like singular activity where you just apply to 10 companies and then it's that. What you got to think about it is like, hey, it's an iterative process, kind of popularized by the lean startup. They talk about build, measure, learn, where you're continuously getting feedback. How do you get feedback? It means you build shit, you interview, and you fail. And from these failures, you learn, hey, you know what? Like, I probably need to get better projects, or you know what? I'm a little weak on SQL interviews, or I'm a little weak on the leak code portion. Like, I need to hit the books again. I need to go practice. It's a build, measure, learn. It's not a one go ahead. So that's one thing we want to mention. And the other thing out of all these that might seem obvious, sorry, the least obvious that we really harp on is cold email. All right, guys, I'm a huge fan of a cold email. Cold email is like when you write an email to somebody you don't know. This is the exact email I sent when I was at Facebook. I was fed up. Look at that time mark, 2:30 a.m. I'm fed up on my job. It's a Saturday night. I'm at home. Kevin's out at the club in in San Jose. I'm sitting in my home in Palo Alto, just like unhappy with my job, unhappy with my life. I'm like, why? What am I doing? Maybe I need to change. Let me see if I can handle the business side. You know, I was that meme. I can handle the business side. If you ever heard of that meme, I was that meme. So I sent this email to the CEO. 24 hours later, I got an interview lined up, boom, boom, boom. And I worked here for 2 years as their head of marketing. So I didn't get the chief of staff position, but they're like, you seem like you know what you're doing in marketing, even though I had no marketing experience. So I'm not trying to say that, oh, okay, because it worked out for me, it'll work out for you. I'm just trying to tell you, people are out there, are receptive to unsolicited emails. As long as you're emailing someone relevant, you're showing your portfolio project, you're showing why you're someone worth responding to, right? Like, look at that. Like, I like name drop Facebook, I name drop Google, I talk about my startup, I show them everything I got. I'm not bashful at all, right? So maybe you don't have to be all gung-ho like this, but I'm just trying to say, like, building projects and then sending via LinkedIn or email those projects to the right people at the right company can really short circuit the whole job application process. Because let's face it, y'all, you've been on Indeed, you've been on LinkedIn, where there's 300 people who applied, you don't even hear back. Forget getting rejected, you just don't even hear back, right? Like, has this resonated with anyone? Like, have you guys been in this position? And I'm curious, has anyone sent a cold email that worked out? I just want to hear actually, I'll hear about that in a second. I just want to give you some more tips on cold emailing. So these are 8 quick tips. My biggest one is following up. People just don't follow up, and people are damn busy, right? So Tanveer had to follow up with me like 3 times to get the slides in. And I was like super excited about this. It's just like, I'm busy, but it's not like I don't like Tanveer. I was like, oh, fuck, like, let me do it, right? You had to message me on LinkedIn and email. That's just normal, right? It's not annoying. I wasn't annoyed by that. That's normal. And I do that to other people, right? And that's just how life is. So that's one of my biggest things. As long as you're someone respond worthy, you've really built projects, built experiences, and show that you're a relevant fit, you shouldn't be ashamed to like reach out multiple times or reach out to multiple people within a company. And the other tips kind of speak for themselves. Yeah, so I'm just curious. Let me just stop the screen share. I just want to hear, like, has anyone sent a cold email that's like gotten them an internship or some cool opportunity? I'm sure there must be someone here in the audience, and I definitely want to make it a little interactive. If so, you can, I don't know how the raise hands thing works. You can just unmute yourself and talk about it real quick for a second. No one? All right, well, that's okay. That's okay. Oh, emailed a bunch of people on a test software engineering team. Did it work out, Bernard? Oh, got an interview. Let's go. So you know what? This is not going to get you your job. Like, interviewing well will get you your job, but like, let's face it, getting interviews is already tough, right? So, oh, and he made us the final round. Okay, Bernard, go off. I love that. Okay, good. We got Bernard, and from the book. Wow, what a dude. I didn't pay him to say that. I didn't pay him to say that. And now Akash is gonna buy the book. Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've also got some to add to that too. Like, I
Yep.
personally have cold emailing never worked for me, but the workshop director about 2 years ago for DS3 before me, he got his like Tesla internship literally by cold emailing a recruiter like that.
Yep.
So it works.
It works, and it's a numbers game, right? It's definitely not like, oh, I sent out 4 emails and it worked. But like, yo, if you email 20 people at Tesla and you have a project where you made a self-driving little RC car, you made a 30-second video, put a GIF of it, and you email that GIF to 20 people at Tesla, yeah, someone's gonna get back to you. And let's face it, a self-driving RC car is not like a PhD thesis project. Like there's templates out there already on how to build like a little small RC car. You just strap on a little Raspberry Pi. Like this is a project you could do in like a month on the weekends, you know, and it'll catch people's attention at Tesla. I'm guaranteeing it, you know? So that's that. But let's talk about the actual interview process, for which Kevin will talk about, because Kevin is kind of the king of interviewing. Yeah, Kevin, the Wall Street Facebook guy. Kevin, tell us about
Cool. All right. So again, all of this stuff that we're going to cover, by the way, is we can go, in depth based on what people want, but obviously, like, first we kind of do a rough lay of the land. Obviously, as Takashi mentioned, there's a lot of subjects within software engineering interviews. Nick and I did the whole like leak code loop many times. That being said, it still is confined within like software engineering, right? So the basics, basic data structure, the basic algorithms. Back in our day, DP was all the rage. Palantir, all these up and coming startups. So like basically, the tough part about data science is like you have to know a lot broader. But don't let this list discourage you, because again, as we'll talk about, like what you really need to know for any role really depends on the role in the company. You don't actually need to be a wizard at all of these things. Now, obviously, if you are, that kudos to you, and you can probably land any job in terms of like, once you get the interview, you can ace any kind of interview. But these are what we thought were like the core topics. So we won't cover coding today. Obviously, we already, Takashi already covered it. So we won't talk about that, but yeah, here's the topics, and then
and a quick shout out. Just we're gonna do a really quick thing just for time, and just it's a weeknight. Our book covers it all in depth, right? So we're not gonna just sit here and like recite like 260 pages of technical stuff, but like we hopefully will give you a little nugget or two, and of course we'll have a little quick question answer session at the end. So ask us personalized questions about any of this. So the first big. Yeah. Kevin, why don't you talk about some?
So again, we're going to keep this quick. Here are some common like higher level patterns that we see, right? So explain like I'm 5. Basically, can you explain technical concepts in a non-technical manner? And then the follow-up to that is like you will be asked further details, right? Like you can't just remember, oh, here's what a p-value is, and I just do it in a very rote manner. They're going to ask you, okay, so what happens if this occurs, right? Oh, like p-value is 0.06, like do you launch the test or do you not? And you're like, oh, well, I don't know. The textbook didn't tell me what to say, right? Like you can't do that, right? So it's knowing enough of the technical material. But then, one way that Nick and I have both found very helpful is to like grab a buddy and talk through and explain, and go through the various scenarios on these topics. So that's the first type of question. The second one we see is really popular is questions based on your past work. So this is especially relevant if you want to do ML like research, for example, where if you've done, sort of like real life machine learning research, they're going to ask you, oh, like use the logistic regression here. Okay, why not SVM? Like why would you use logistic regression versus SVM? Why, like, how do you measure performance? Things like that, right? So you definitely should, for anything you have on your resume, like really, really understand and know and try to anticipate, like, hey, if it's machine learning, you're going to get asked about the methodology, right? If it's more statistics based, you might also get asked like on experimentation side or whatever, right?
And one nuance to this is like coding people. You're probably thinking like, oh, well, we're asked about our side projects too. But here's the difference, right? In data science is such a broad field, and there's so many things to know. It's hard for them to really assess like, hey, does this person know machine learning? Because it's unfair if you haven't done much work with SVMs, but you know a ton about logistic regression. It's unfair for me to really just start asking you and grilling you on SVM. It's better I dig on what you've done. So even in SWE interviews, they'll ask you about your projects, but in data science, especially ML, like the more niche, the broader the field it is, the less they can just ask you a random, recurrent neural network question, and more they'll ask you about, oh, tell me about your project where you used RNNs. And they'll just push you to your limit to make sure you did what you said you did. and you know your foundational stuff. So they're going to ask you to start from like textbook all the way to like what you actually did, all around that one project, which again goes back to what we were talking about of building fucking great portfolio projects. Because that's when these conversations get way more interesting, way more nuanced, where you can really prove, oh man, you know, like this person knows what they're doing and they made something, you know, they actually did something of value. Even if they didn't have an internship, just on their own in the summer, they built something real. All right, Kev.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the third one, this is a little niche for more ML roles or like Wall Street quant kind of jobs, but the most technical you'll ever go is just pure whiteboarding. So they'll ask you something like, oh, you know, can you derive this MLE? Or, oh, can you optimize this portfolio for me or something like that, right? So like very technical kind of like pure math whiteboard. This is kind of rare. Shouldn't worry about it unless you're applying for those specific kind of jobs. If anyone is, more than happy to talk about it. But yeah, and then, you know, generally, again, this is all covered in the book. Here's a list of core concepts, stuff that you would generally find in your like introductory coursework, and then maybe a little bit outside of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then one thing I want to just call out is some people come to us. One of the big questions they ask Kevin and I is, hey, like I'm a second year in data science. Like I don't know neural nets. I don't know deep learning. I just know regression. Like how am I ever going to hang in this industry? And like we're here to tell you that so much of data science really is linear and logistic regression. Like they, you know, even though on Hacker News and in research and this state of the art is using something crazy, there's so few companies that have the data to support that and the ML maturity. So even data scientists at Facebook, most of them are doing more product analytics work, SQL queries, rather than inventing some new algorithm, because that work is done by a very specific small group of people. But most data scientists at Facebook are really just doing data viz and cutting you know, user analytics data, like basic exploratory data analysis work. So this is a roundabout way to say, don't freak out if you don't know the difference between a CNN and RNN and how to apply them and all the math there. Like focus on the fundamentals, like know your PCA, know your regression. What are the assumptions of regression? Know that, know your basics, and you'll be fine. There is a place for you. Don't, you know, get scared with all this talk about neural nets, especially for interviews. Yeah. You know, we're not going to solve these questions, but we just want to quickly give you a sample, a little taste of what these questions actually look like. So why don't you just take about 30 seconds to just check it out, you know, just read it. We're not going to solve them. Well, actually, maybe we'll just say, yeah, the Uber one is quite, yeah, what you would expect as like a theoretical question around ML. The Facebook one's just a straightforward probability one that you might see in a, you know, introductory probability class, maybe even some people who ever did like math team or math competitions in high school, it's that kind of stuff. And then the D. Shah one is a fun one. Actually, Kevin, you can talk about the D. Shah one. So actually, this is the Facebook solution. It's kind of straightforward. We're going to skip it because it's kind of boring. If we were in person, we'd be throwing around candy to whoever could solve it first, but we can't throw anything at you right now. So Kevin, you want to give a little nuance on this D. Shah one because it's pretty interesting.
Sure. Yeah, and this one is very well wired into my brain because I've been asked this question in person many years ago. So, I mean, the real like kind of clicking point here is like being able to realize you can use the central limit theorem, and so, you know, I mean, there's the explanation, so you can kind of read it and think about it. But again, you're calculating like z-scores for the outcomes, right? So like seeing 550 heads should occur, you know, with a some percentage, and that percentage happens to be extremely small under normality assumptions, right? So yeah, the math is kind of, and the fun part here is like, this seems like a very detailed solution, but like I was asked this in person, and like, again, like I kind of had to think on the fly and was like, okay, you know what? The rough math, right? So again, square root of 250 is, you know, you don't know what that is, but you know it's approximately 16, right? And that's something that's like a fun little thing that I remember doing. And yeah, the answer here is obviously approximate, but like, again, it's the z-score is significant. So
and let's not underestimate these kind of things. So this is like a foundational, like this is just like your first stat class, right? A z-score, a confidence interval. central limit theorem. But I put this question up on LinkedIn. So every Monday I post an interview question on LinkedIn, and I think like 900 people responded to it. And 81% of people got the answer wrong, right? Because people don't think in terms of like central limit theorem and pulling out a z-score. They just look at this, their mind freezes over, and they're like, oh, I guess not. Like, you know, things happen randomly, like who knows, you know? So that's the kind of thing, like, you know, we're definitely doing it not justice by showing you the solution, but that's where we do a plug. Hey, you know, if you read the book, you shouldn't be reading the solutions. And we purposely separated out the questions from the solution so that you couldn't just like straight up look at the solution. You'd actually have to sit there and think about it. You couldn't just read on. We separated it out. But this is a pretty good, fun, indicative question that you'll see. SQL and coding interview, I'm not going to talk about it. Here are just some of the common queries. You know, Tanveer and Takashi did a good job talking about it. Practice makes perfect, honestly. This has been studied to death. Cracking the coding interview, LeetCode, they're both great. Our book also covers coding. Our book definitely covers SQL. Kevin, do you want to give a little commentary?
I think we can just skip through. Yeah, I mean, there's a basic
commentary.
like, yeah, there's a commentary would just be, I think in practice, most people, a lot of people ask us like, oh, do we need to know window functions really well? And like in practice, no. I mean, maybe if the bar keeps going up, like, yeah, but like, generally speaking, if you know the basics, I think the key is just not freezing up. And if you can do like, if you know your basic joins and all these basic operations, like you should be fine. So generally speaking,
usually
it's
some subqueries, some CTEs, some joins, but I think sometimes on like HackerRank and LeetCode, they do more like tricky questions. And in reality, you're never asked tricky, like we have to like there's a trick. Like sometimes in LeetCode, in coding questions, you feel like there's a trick. Like, damn it, like I didn't know to use a heap or something like that. But in these ones, it's generally more straightforward what industry asks. It's just like, oh yeah, I just join two things, filter it on something, group by this, you know. But yeah, that's it. Practice makes perfect. And then open-ended case study. So this is one of my favorite ones. So again, coding, it's pretty straightforward. You just code something, you know if it's right or wrong. Data science, this is an interdisciplinary field. You're working with so many stakeholders. So how do we figure out, are you someone who's just good at problem solving in general? Well, they're going to hit you with an open-ended case study. Most companies do, where for about 45 minutes, they're going to present you with a hypothetical question. Yeah, here's some tips. Like the first big thing we always notice people do wrong is not clarifying the problem. Second big tip is whatever answer you give, it should align with what the business and company is trying to do. And it's so funny to see how often people mess this up. It sounds obvious, and we'll actually do a little like example of this. But with the Facebook dating thing, so keep that in the back of your mind. And then the last thing is mentioning trade-offs. There's never one right answer to these open-ended questions. It's always about figuring out, hey, here's what's good, but by the way, like here's the problem. So if you're able to mention the trade-offs for everything you propose, you're showing yourself as a very conscientious person and someone who really understands what they're doing, because there's no free lunch. There's no, oh, here's the correct solution for this open-ended problem. There's always some nuance. So let me stop, take some questions real quick, and then we'll try to do the Facebook dating one for just 2 minutes to give you an example. But, you know, we presented a lot of material real quick, kind of fast. Let's chat about it for a second. What's up, guys? How's this going? Is things making sense? Anyone want me to talk about, or Kevin to talk about stat, ML, prob?
I have a question about the coding section of the interview. Do you guys agree that it doesn't matter what language you're using in the technical section? Because I've heard like differing opinions on that.
Yeah, it generally doesn't matter, but if you know Python is quite easy and good to do. I mean, let's go very specific. What are you debating between? What are the two languages you're debating between?
So I'm a CS major, and all my coursework, or most of my coursework, is in Java, but I'm more interested in data science internships. So naturally, I think I'll be stronger in Java. I already am way stronger in Java, but I mean, I can try to catch up with Python.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm not and you were a first year, if I remember correctly, right?
Correct.
I would go Kevin, what do you have any idea on that one? I would say Java as a first year, just because like there's so many things to learn anyways. You don't want to like introduce another thing to the equation. But you say you want to do DS2. So
I think right now, most data science jobs, the coding section, like generally speaking, most data scientists use Python or R, right?
Yeah.
So learning R is, I mean, basically Python's easy to learn. Like if you can learn Java, you can learn Python pretty easily. Vice versa is a little bit harder.
Yeah, just bite the bullet and do Python. I honestly just like up your Python skill. It'll be fine. Yeah, I think it'll be fine. Just
All
you'll
right,
be fine
thank you.
because sometimes they don't give an option. Yeah, cool.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have a quick question? And otherwise, we'll go to this interactive thing about the what's it called?
Vivek has a question in the chat. Do you have any
Yeah.
advice for how not to freeze up during interviews?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'll give a quick
Yeah.
perspective. I think Nick will have a better perspective. Like
Yeah,
I'll give a quick one specifically for technical interviews because I hate it when you freeze. Like I personally have bombed so many interviews freezing up. Again, there's no silver bullet. I think it depends on the situation. But I think number one is depending on the type of company. For example, like for Wall Street companies, they're generally very like they want you to find the answer quickly, and if you don't, like they're kind of like, hey, like what's going on, kind of. So I would say like try to time box it. Like it sucks, and sometimes you're not going to figure out what the answer is. Like maybe it's a tough DP problem, or maybe it's like some tough ML thing that you forgot. I think you just like, if you really don't know it, you shouldn't pretend to know it. That's the worst thing you can do. And you definitely don't want to go down the rabbit hole with someone who does have experience. Like if someone's asking me like, oh, like I saw this on your resume, like this method that you use, like talk about it. And I'm like, oh, actually, I don't know how to do it. Cause I remember when I was a freshman or sophomore, I was interviewing at like, I don't know, Citadel or something. And then I was like, they were like, oh, he was like, oh yeah, like talk about some coursework. And I was like, oh yeah, I know about linear regression. He's like, oh, you know about linear regression? Like describe it for me. Let's talk through like RSS, TSS, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is too much, right? So I think number one is just, if you're freezing because you don't actually know it, just admit you don't know it. That's number one. And then otherwise, I think like, yeah, just check in with them. Like, I think I personally don't like to spend too long in silence. I know that like, it's kind of tough, especially like for tougher areas like ML or stats. It's
yeah,
really tough to not.
You gotta verbalize. You gotta.
Yeah, you have to like start talking. Like you can't just like sit there in silence for 20 minutes, come back out. Like by then you've already failed the interview, unfortunately. So
yeah,
it's kind of like coding. So
I love that,
Kevin.
Kevin's just like not even shy about it. Like, yeah, at that point you just failed. No,
I mean, I've been there. So.
Yeah, no, dude, I've been there too. Practice makes perfect. That's all I can say is like, hey, know your shit, and if you don't know it, say whatever you know, right? Like if we had that 550 flips thing, be like, you know what? I forget how to compute a z-score, but what I want to do is just see is, based on a distribution of what's expected, like how divergent 550 is from what was expected of 500. And I don't remember the formula for how to compute a z-score, but I know that keyword z-score, you'd be good in my book. Not like really good, but you would get some credibility for saying something.
So it's kind of like coding, where you always try to clarify the question, ask and make sure you understand the problem, and then like slowly crack away at it, right? You always want to come up with like the brute force solution before getting to an optimized solution, because if you jump straight in, either you're a genius or they think you're cheating or you've already seen the problem or something, right? Same way for like this DE Shaw one. Like again, I don't exactly remember how exactly I answered or how long it took me, but if I didn't know the answer off the top of my head, I would be like, hey, you know what? Like, okay, what does it mean to be fair? Well, we know fair coin is like, heads 50% of the times. Okay, great. Like if I saw it was 90% of the times it was heads, and I'm like, then I would probably think it's biased. Oh, great. I noticed it's a large sample size. How can I maybe like leverage that? Stuff like that, right? So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. I know we went on a rant.
I can also add on for the like technical coding interviews particularly. We talked earlier about how, when you're solving these coding questions, you should definitely talk about your thought process aloud, right? Especially when you're coming up with like the optimized solution for a certain coding problem. If you talk about your thinking process aloud while you're trying to figure out what the optimal solution could be, typically the interviewer can also give you hints then, because a lot of these interviews come off as like not just to speaking about your code, but also the conversation, and they might give you hints on, how to unblock you. So just speak out loud your thought process and your.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So let's
yeah.
just do a quick Facebook dating example. And then we will just do an AMA. So hold on for that. Let's just spend a minute. And you guys think about Facebook dating. How would you measure the success of Facebook dating? Share screen. Cool. Does anyone want to start? Just unmute yourself. How would you measure the success? So just ask a question, honestly. The first thing is clarify. Who wants to ask a question? Kevin, can you read the chat? I can't see chat.
Yeah, I'll read it out. Whenever
Is there
someone...
has anyone? Yeah. No one has.
Everyone's pretty shy.
Everyone's pretty shy. How would you assess the success of Facebook dating? Worst case, I'll ask Tanveer. He's the host. He has to respond.
I mean, I can give my best answer if no one else wants to.
I guess I would oh, sorry. Do you want to go ahead? Or
yeah, sure. I guess I would measure success at Facebook dating by how many people actually get together or actually have a conversation and they continue the conversation.
Okay, that's a good one. So first rule is to clarify though, right? Imagine I just sit you down, right? Like what questions you must have some questions for me, right? Like what is Facebook dating? What are its goals? What's the product do? What's its business goals, right? So remember, that's the first step is clarify. Though your answer was not bad. So we'll talk about that in a second, right? But the first thing is clarify some of these things because you'll realize in which ways your answer was good and bad once you clarify. So who wants to ask a clarifying question? It's purposely vague, guys. It's purposely vague. That's how they do it.
Yeah, my first thoughts about this would be, what exactly do you mean by success? Are you trying to measure it in terms of penetration, how many people are will sign up for Facebook dating, are how many people are are single on Facebook, blah blah, actually sign up for Facebook dating, or are we talking about user engagement? Are we talking about relationships, as someone suggested? So I definitely ask that's the first thing I'd try to ask probably.
Perfect, right? Look at that. I put such a nebulous word, success. What does success mean, right? That's actually the core of the problem, but it's great that you asked that. That's exactly the right line of thinking. That's what they're actually looking for. Okay. So now let me tell you this. A good question could have been to be hey, tell me a little bit more about Facebook dating. What's the scenario like? And I would tell you, oh, we have 3 months worth of data. It launched in Brazil. And now we're trying to see, is this a good product? Should we launch it to the rest of the world? We just have Brazil as a test market. And that would be a good time for you to ask, okay, and what's the goal of Facebook dating? And I would say, hey, we're not like Tinder. We're not a hookup app. We're like Hinge. We're trying to foster meaningful relationships on the app. We're trying to get Facebook users to create meaningful relationships in a romantic sense. We already do that for friendship. We already do that for family. We want to play in the romance game. Knowing all that, who wants to give an example metric or two?
Maybe one metric that we could give is the length of the relation. So how long they've been after using the app, how long they've been talking to one another. So instead of Tinder, which may be really fast, the relation time, the Facebook dating could have longer relation time, and we want to optimize for that.
Perfect. And what you're doing really well is you're bringing in Facebook data, right? I mean, of course, Facebook is going to answer this with Facebook data, right? So here's a bad answer. We're going to see how many people got married. How the hell is Facebook going to know that, right? Or maybe they will know that, but it'll take 3 years, right? Unless people get freaking married in Brazil in a month. No, it's going to take a while to know that. So that's an example of a bad answer because that's a delayed metric and it's a lagging, not a leading indicator of success, right? And another thing you mentioned was how long they've been talking to each other. I think that's a good one. Does anyone else have any creative ideas to know if Facebook dating is successful, right? Because someone might argue bro, people just talk for a long time and then ghost. No one ever meets up. It's not meaningful. It's a chat. just another chat buddy, you know, it's like Discord. Like, how do we know that we're doing good? Does anyone else have an idea? And then we'll finish up and do
Maybe Arvin or Hitesh wants to unmute. They had some comments.
Yeah, sure. I can't see the chat, but
Yeah. Let's see if either of them. Okay, well, Arvin said number of active users, conversion rate, customer acquisition cost, and then Hitesh said number of users signed up. And Tanveer said how many people changed their relationship status on Facebook with a laughing emoji.
Yeah, no, that's great, right? I don't know how fast Tanveer moves, but usually I wait a long time to make it Facebook official. So it'd be hard to really know, you know, if we met, like it'd take a solid 2 years before I change my Facebook relationship status, to be honest. But I like where you're thinking. That's a good creative answer. That's perfect. Signups, right? That's like a very top of the funnel metric, right? Like maybe people are signing up, but then they don't really use it, right? So that's where we like the kind of conversation ability as a good one. I think someone mentioned engagement. That's a great answer, because how does Facebook what does Facebook care about? Yeah, sure. They say some bullshit about meaningful relationships. What they care about is engagement, right? And that's where aligning your answer to the business goal of like Facebook makes money when you see ads. You see ads because you're engaged with the product. You keep checking Facebook 3 times a day, or maybe you used to, you know, so the point of the story is this is what I'm giving you, like demonstrating like how clarifying questions helps you give a better answer. And that how thinking about Facebook, hey, they're an ads-driven company. They care about engagement. They care about meaningful relationships. You'll see a lot of that language in the Facebook terminology. If you go to their about page or company mission, you'll see they keep using the word meaningful communities, meaningful relationship, meaningful social interaction. That's how you start really giving a stellar answer, because you're using language that Facebook using inside. And essentially, this is supposed to be mocking what you'd be actually doing as a product data scientist at Facebook day after day. So this is just a quick example of like an open-ended case study where for 20, 30 minutes, you'd work with somebody to answer some of these kind of questions. So hopefully you got a good flavor of it. This is it. Now it's just AMA time. Just some future advice for leveling up in data, but we can skip this. It's fine because we're already out of time. So if anyone wants to leave, they can leave. And if they want to stay and ask questions, like ask us questions, like that's what we're here for, you guys to answer questions. And then of course, always had to plug it, go check out the book. We spent a year on it, and it would mean a lot if you all checked out the book, because it basically explains everything we explained and then some in basically 290 pages. That's the link to the book. But yes, ask away, guys. We're here for you.
Yeah, go ahead, guys. Thanks again to Nick and Kevin, all obviously, for coming out. This was an awesome event that, you know, I'm happy that they were able to come out and collaborate with. And their book is definitely a great resource, not only just for like, you know, studying for these interviews that you might have coming, but also just help you actually land those interviews. So definitely recommend checking it out.
So happy to answer any questions about portfolio projects, resumes, applying, the data science stuff, coding as well. And also thank you, Tanveer, for having us. Thank you, Takashi, for showing us about the coding interviews and the DS Student Society, Data Science Student Society. Y'all had me here last year. Y'all had me back, so I appreciate that. And we got a book under our belt now this time. Last time we were talking a bunch of smack without any book to back it, but we're here.
One of my questions with the mock interview that we did. So we should not like just ask, oh, what do you mean? What is success to Facebook, right? We have to like go about it in another way. So we can't just ask the same question back to the interview.
Yeah, that would be cheating, because that would be too much of a hack. You just ask them the answer. But yeah, exactly. It is conversational, right? It is conversational. It is a little bit more like, hey, let's unpack it. How do you define success at Facebook? Like what metrics? Okay, then you unpack it like, hey, tell me more about Facebook dating. Is this a new product? Like what's the product experience look like? What's the goal? You can ask them that. Then they'll say, oh, goal is meaningful social interaction. This is this. Because maybe their goal was, oh, we're trying to print money. Like sometimes that's an answer like, hey, we're trying to boost ad view rates, right? But that's probably not the goal of Facebook dating in the short term. especially because I mentioned it's a test in Brazil. They're not just trying to squeeze money out of Brazil. They're just trying to see, like, does this product work? Which is why their monetization related metrics might have been not the idealist answer, because I kind of emphasized in the beginning, hey, this is a test, Brazil, prototype. What are we going to focus on? So it's up to you to have that business and product sense for you to be like, you know what? I read, the Facebook shareholder update. I know you guys track engagement. I know you guys, I read your manifesto, or I read your mission statement. Like, you guys are about meaningful social interaction. I would try to make sure that meaningful relationships are being built, not like Tinder. How could we measure that? And that's where the conversation starts. And you give some ideas, they do. So this is where I mean it's conversational. But as you can see, it's guided by you having some product and business insight, Like, you can't, it requires you to know the company, their product, have done some research. And that's one of the best ways to prepare for this kind of interviews. Besides just doing a lot of practice from our book and just having general sense, it's to do company specific research too, which I think Tanveer alluded to in the beginning as well. Like, look up the company and their mission statement and their values, because that shows up even in the metrics they track. Anything else, guys? Portfolio projects, growing in your career, growing as a data scientist. What is life like outside after?
Yeah, I kind of had a few questions, but I'll stick with the more important ones first. Yeah, so just for now, right now I'm a math econ major and I'm minoring in data science, but like I kind of want to continue and actually work in something data science related later. So I guess what I wanted to ask is, like, I'm currently thinking of adding it as a double major. It might either make me take like 5 courses till I graduate every single quarter, or add an extra 1 or 2 quarters. But I was thinking, like, is it really worth it to take a double major, and like, should I actually go for that step?
That's hard to say. Kevin, you want to give a thought? I don't know.
Yeah, my 2 cents are also, wait, sorry, what year were you?
Right now I'm a junior.
Oh, you're a junior. I see. Okay. Yeah, and you said doing the double major would require 5 more courses every quarter, basically?
No, it's like, so if to graduate, I could have taken, so right now, if I stick with the minor, then I'll take 4 courses every single quarter until I graduate.
Yeah.
But if I take the major, then it's more like 5 courses every single quarter until I graduate.
Oh, so 1 extra course.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 extra. Oh, that's not bad. Hey, yeah, that's not bad. Again, it just depends on, I won't, again, there's no ever purely correct answer. It's all contextual, but at least for me, when I was deciding, I basically weighed, okay, how many more credits do I have to take? So for me, it was basically going from, yeah, I did another degree and it was adding like 2 classes every quarter. So I averaged like 6 or 7 classes every quarter. And then I think like you need to look at the curriculum. There's obviously bound to be overlap, which is great. So for example, at Penn, like having done all these CS like ML classes, that had a huge overlap with the stats credits. So wherever you can double count credits, like again, it's school, like you just try to double count as much stuff as possible. So you should just do that. In terms of like whether this will affect anything down the line, I think it depends. It depends on basically like does the degree maybe on paper make you more sort of like attractive of a candidate? Like maybe, I'm not sure. Like I think math and econ's already strong enough. Like, so I'm not that convinced that you need an extra degree in data science. That being said, it also depends on, again, like if you're willing to put in, like, again, we talked about portfolio projects, right? Like that's always a great way to break into data science. I don't think anyone would question your quantitative background given math and econ. And I think it's just more a little bit about like applying and being like, hey, you know what? I do want to work at like XYZ company in tech or like this specific space, right? And so, yeah, I think it's just a combination of like I think the answer would be a little bit different if you were thinking about grad school, but if it's like an extra degree, I personally probably, like for me personally, like I just wanted to kind of maximize exposure to different topics in school. So I took on all the coursework necessary to do that. So if I were you, I probably like would do it if it's only an extra class, if it doesn't seem that bad. And you're already a junior, so it's not like you're a freshman and you have to take 3 extra classes a quarter or whatever. But I actually feel like, I would just try and make sure that like, on the one hand, it's if there's a lot of overlap with the math degree, then you double count credits. But on the other hand, like you don't get as much programming exposure, for example, right? So I would just try to figure out like, what is it that you're optimizing for? Short answer, I don't know if it'll affect the job hunt. Like I think math and econ are pretty good. Sorry, this is really long, but happy to chat offline just about this. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. Is there a way I can contact you or something? Or...
Yeah, we'll put in our contact info. Yeah.
All right, sure, great.
Yeah, let me message you. I'll message you my email.
How do you pronounce your name? Tatum or
Tatum.
Tatum. What's up?
Yeah, no worries, thank you.
Yeah. You asked, it's pretty rough for undergrads. Yeah, that's true. So you could look at data analyst, you could look at BI, business analyst, business intelligence. May I know what year you are?
I'm a senior.
Yeah. I think it is hard, but like you got what, probably you have a full semester left before you graduate?
Yeah, I have 2 more quarters.
2 more quarters, all right. You got enough time where you can figure it out. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean to say, yes, it's hard, but like building a portfolio project might be like a 1-2 month activity. Getting your resume in order might be a week activity. Going through and doing technical interview prep might be, 2-3 weeks. Cold emailing. Basically, I'm saying you got like a solid 6 months to figure it out. And the amount of work that's needed is on the order of like 3-4 months on the side. I'm saying it's not like full-time work. So I'm saying like you can make it work. You're right though. Like everything I'm saying is I'm not reassuring you. Yes, it is harder to do, but I'm still saying, what are you studying? Are you studying data science?
Yeah.
You should be able to make it work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Believe in yourself a little bit. You're studying data science, like there are definitely people who come into this field way later in their masters, or they studied art history in undergrad and then they're trying to do data science in their masters. Like, you studied this in your undergrad, you did the classes, it's not going to be a cakewalk. And believe me, even after my internship with Google, I still had to apply everywhere, still got ghosted by hella companies. Like it was still painful. It's never not painful. Even Kevin did a recent job hunt a little bit. It was painful. And on the side, the man's been writing this book on data science interviewing. He's doing data science interviews and it's still painful, and I bet my next job hunt will be painful too. So you know what? I believe in you. It's hard, but you can do it. You got the time, you got the school, you got the name. It'll work out.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Hitesh, what's up?
Hey Nick, hello Kevin.
Hey.
Thank you so much for this session. That was really informative.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I had a question. Like, say, I'm doing my master's at Columbia University.
Sure.
And my major is in computer science, but back in India, I have around 6 years of experience.
Yeah.
So right now, I'm looking out for data science and machine learning engineer roles. But I've heard a mixed opinion about the kind of roles I should look into, because people say your experience in India are not counted here in US. So just want to know what kind of roles should I look out for having a 6 years of experience in the data science and machine learning field?
Yeah, no, it's stupid. I've heard the same thing, right? Like experience in India doesn't count. By the way, did you come because you saw it on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I didn't know if it would work. I just kind of like forgot to post. So I was like, oh, whoever comes through, comes through. Okay, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've been following your LinkedIn post for a long time now.
Okay, cool. I love it. I love to hear that. So, and what are you studying at Columbia right now?
Master's in computer science.
Yeah, no, you should be fine. Columbia is a great university. It's well known. It's Ivy League. You're here in the US. Yeah, probably they're not going to make you a tech lead immediately and you will have to work your way up. But I had friends like that at Facebook who got down leveled as well, where they had experience in India, like Qualcomm India, for 4 or 5 years. They come in, they got down leveled as if they only had 2 years experience, not 5, but then they quickly got promoted like after a year. So I think it's just like a risk thing. And it's also sort of like unfair, but like an H-1B thing where it's like, oh, well, you have like timelines and you have more constraints on your job hunt, so they can just lowball you. So it is true. It is true that they will not count it as much, but they definitely won't ignore it, right? Especially you're saying it's in data science and machine learning. Like I still think you should go for machine learning roles, like a master's in computer science. As long as you have projects and skills around it, you'll be fine.
Okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, don't let that scare you guys. Wherever I see like fear, I always want to make sure like I let you guys know like this process sucks. It's long, it's painful, but we don't have to be scared about it, because as long as we're structured, you know, and as long as we do the work, we like fix up our resumes, we build those portfolio projects, we send those emails, things will work out. Because this is a good market. And you go to Columbia, you're studying CS. You guys are studying data science at UCSD. Like things should work out as long as you put in the work. It just will take longer than you expect. But that's life, right? Kevin and I, we tried to get this book done in like 3 months. It took us a year and 2 months, right? And like the whole time we're thinking like, oh, I'll get done, but it didn't. But that's just life, right? And now it's done, and now we're happy, you know. And you know what I mean. So we were scared when we were doing it, and we're like, why is it taking so long? And the job hunt is exactly that way. We're just like, dude, why is no one calling me back? Or like, why is this so tough? But we've all been there. It sucks. Even if the job market's hot, it sucks. Like it's still always a grind. Cool.
Another one small question, short question.
yeah.
So say suppose there are the job where they say the senior data scientist and they require the minimum requirement is say 5 years or 5+ years.
Yeah.
So should I apply for those roles as well, like where they are expecting to have 5+ years, 5 and 6+ years, or should I?
And in India, did you do data science work?
Yeah.
You should apply for it. Listen. If they say, bro, like you're not senior quality, you just wasted 10 minutes, whatever. And if they say you're good, but maybe not senior, they'll say, okay, well, we'll consider you for your normal role. But there'll never be a world where like, oh, how dare him, like F him, like we're not going to talk to, like, do you know what I mean? Like there's no harm in it. Like, I don't think it's terrible. Definitely still focus on more entry. Like I wouldn't have like this kind of ego of like, oh, like I only apply to senior data science roles, because you're just making it harder for yourself. And let's be honest, you can join a role as a normal data scientist, kick ass, and in like 6 months get promoted, especially at a smaller company, you know? So title might not be as important as just having something solid with good pay. Like, I don't care what you call me as long as the pay is good, the work's interesting, and I'm learning, you know? So I wouldn't stress too much about that, you know? Go get a good job first, forget about the title as much. I mean, as long as it's data science, you know, if you're, you know, into that. Mason, what's up?